On September 11th, when the world again pauses to join our nation in honoring the more than 3,000 innocent victims of the 2001 terror attacks, it will be for the 20th time. As we mourn the senseless killing of so many men, women, and children that bright Tuesday morning, including members of our own Secret Service family, let us also carry forward with pride and purpose the memory of everything we've accomplished since then. In cities, towns, and communities across the country, our national identity was challenged like never before. Through some of our nation's darkest days, a groundswell of pride and patriotism emerged, lifting our spirits and showing the world how a free and compassionate society responds to unthinkable atrocities and abject evil. We must never forget our immeasurable losses, but let us always be grateful for the resolute courage and bravery of every American dedicated to preserving the universal freedoms that propel our nation ever forward. Our agency may have lost its physical home in New York City with the destruction of our Secret Service field office at 7 World Trade Center, but new buildings often rise where older ones have fallen. Our spirit has endured. Our mission has endured. And now, 20 years later, we stand together as one team, one workforce, and one nation, immovable in our resolve and determined not only to remain worthy of trust and confidence, but also to reflect the strength and fortitude of the world's greatest and most resilient democracy. Our memories of that awful day remain clear, and we are humbled and proud to share just a few of those with you now.
It's been 20 years, but I remember it like it was yesterday.
It was a beautiful day.
The sky was blue, the sun was out, it was peaceful, it was serene.
I don't like to talk about the day.
I've probably talked about this more today than I have in the last 20 years.
Things can happen on a beautiful day, at any time.
My story's easy compared to others.
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center.
Plane has crashed into the World Trade
Southern tip of Manhattan.
in New York.
That was based out of 7 World Trade Center.
Number 7 World Trade.
Which was just across the street from the North Tower.
That's our largest office, so it was concerning.
We activated the fire alarm.
I ordered everybody to evacuate the office.
Our personnel were evacuating.
The lobby to 7 World Trade opens up to Vesey Street. There was debris scattered all across the street. Stuff was falling down.
And at some point, I ended up on the back side of our building. And I just remember hearing a loud, engine.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
Oh God.
There's another one.
That looks like a second plane.
At that point in time, we knew that this was not an accident.
We knew that hundreds of people had just perished.
You could just feel the tremendous amount of heat and all this debris just raining down on us.
And then I looked up and I started seeing people falling from the buildings, and that was the
sound I'll never forget. The sound of bodies hitting the ground I'll never forget.
Seeing people holding hands as they jumped.
And there was nothing you could do to go help those people.
I thought the world was coming to an end.
It's hell on earth. It's hell on earth. It's just no way to describe it.
Vice President Cheney was at the White House, and I just remember us trying to track, where are all of our protectees?
We took the protectees away from the prime targets.
May God bless the victims, their families, and America.
We needed to move the president as quickly as we possibly could, get him on Air Force One, get him up in the sky.
You can see the armed guards on top of the White House keeping watch.
We had to get the First Lady out of the Capitol. A decision was made, we're going to move her here to Secret Service headquarters.
My responsibility that day was for the safety of the Vice President.
I just put the earpiece in and turned the radio on, and I heard the radio call, and it was inbound plane to the White House.
The White House West Wing has been evacuated.
I jumped up, started running, keyed my mic and told Jim Scott, take him down now.
And actually grabbed him by the belt and said, let's go.
Down it starts to come.
It just sounded like a freight train coming down the street.
A monster, a metallic monster. It was absolute chaos.
All you could do is run. Debris from the tower just rained down on us.
And you come out of the dust on the other side. And then you kind of think, okay, well, now we got to see who we can help and what needs to be done.
Tommy Armis comes to mind.
Tommy Armis carrying injured to ambulances.
There was a fire truck that was unmanned, and 4 agents were actually fighting fires.
We still had people in our duty desk area.
I ended up manning phones. The two-way SkyTel pager system, communication, of course, was completely dependent on that.
Our lifeline is that New York duty desk.
That tower, we saw it was starting to burn. Somewhere in this process, a page comes through. Move north toward Chelsea Piers at all costs. I don't know how long we're going to last here. It's too dangerous. The tower's leaning.
If the top falls, it's going to land on 7.
Up until that point, I was still getting pages from Eugene Gervich.
They wouldn't leave.
And I said, we're leaving. Let's get going here.
I had to order them to leave, and they eventually did.
And that's when we heard the tower collapsing.
All of the sirens that you had heard and all the whistles you had heard was gone. It was pure silence.
And we made our way all the way up to Chelsea Piers.
At some point, I commandeered a Coast Guard boat as well as a Nassau County Police boat.
They put together this little navy of theirs.
And we brought 4 boats and a ferry into Manhattan.
We got them on a boat, took them across the Hudson. We had buses waiting for them there.
On foot, by boat, swim, I was getting home.
It wasn't until I was able to finally walk at the Chelsea Pier and we found an office that had a hard line. And all of us were lined up in the hallway, just waiting to use the phone.
I was able to get through, and I called my mother. And I said, Mom, I'm alive.
That's what happened. Her mother called me and told me that she had heard from her.
You know, I went home. Just glad to get home.
Once the dust settled, we started taking names.
And just trying to account, for each and every individual.
I remember that when we were at Chelsea Piers, that's when I first found out about Craig Miller, that he was missing.
Joining Dale, I'm Kathleen Matthews, and we want to take you back several hours to about 10 o'clock this morning when a plane crashed into the Pentagon.
Investigators are still sifting through a crater in Pennsylvania tonight. That's all that's left of United Airlines Flight 93.
The president began this day in Sarasota, Florida, where he was going to be promoting his agenda on education, then flew to Louisiana, then flew to Nebraska, and finally, when the Secret Service and U.S. law enforcement thought it was safe, they're now bringing him back to the White House.
I remember we were all watching as Marine One landed on the South grounds and watching President Bush get off and just make a beeline for the Oval Office.
The president saying nothing as he walks by there.
You could just tell on his face the seriousness, the determination, and I think we all knew that this was going to be something that was going to shape our lives and the history of our country.
We have been led to believe by some sources the president would come directly back to Washington.
We had gotten punched in the nose, and nobody was going to scare us. Nobody was going to push us away.
Work continued. Work had to continue. We couldn't just stop what we were doing.
We had to get offices. We had to get equipment. We had to ensure everybody was okay.
Leads that were coming in that needed to be run down, so we set up task forces between the FBI, ATF.
We had to recreate all of our cases. We lost everything.
We even had a couple limos brought up from D.C., put right in front. In case anybody came up, we had some armored limos.
Quickly, the protection started to roll in because everybody wanted to come visit New York City and visit Ground Zero.
It was announced that the president was going to come to New York on Friday. This is Wednesday.
One of the things was we had to figure out a way to get a motorcade down there.
And I remember standing with the PPD advance team that came up around the debris field trying to figure out where we could put the president.
We were making this work. The president was going there, and this is what we could train to do. We're going to make work.
You had the smoke, you had the debris, you had the flames.
You have to remember, he came to the pile. There were bodies still being pulled out of that rubble.
One of the people in the crowd saying,
We can't hear you.
I can hear you.
That wasn't coordinated. No, I mean, it was a shout from the back.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knock these buildings down will hear all of it soon.
I was 5 feet from the president working my counter surveillance. That was a very proud moment.
You knew at that point a sleeping bear had been awoken.
It was just an unbelievable sight, very emotional. And then at the time when it was over, I had to get everybody else on the bus, and I had to get them back out that day.
Those 3 or 4 months after that day were probably the most difficult time of my life.
You know, I think in many respects it made me a better agent, because I think anybody who was on the job on that day realized that, you know, we have a job to do for the country and for the American people.
I continued to work at Ground Zero for 2 months until November. I worked there every day.
We spent a bunch of time up at the landfill sifting through debris, looking for human remains.
You just wanted to have closure for Craig Miller's family, and you wanted to have closure for all the thousands of other people that were there. We wanted to do for him what we would want someone to do for us.
We worked very hard here with the city in recovering Craig Miller's remains, and it took a few years.
A true hero, obviously a veteran of the war, medic, and a great family man. We lost that day and represented the Secret Service very well.
No matter what grade you were, what title you were, what your responsibilities were, everyone, and especially the administrative staff, wanted to help out and do the right thing.
Even in the days that followed, we all came together. And we did what we can to help.
I feel bad for my wife at the time because she couldn't really relate to what I was going through and why I would stare at the wall or stare at the TV.
That's going to stay with me. That's going to stay with me. I just know it's no way to get that memory out. There's going to be no way. So I just have to live with that.
That was the real tragedy of 9/11, the human loss and the impact on the families.
But I'm so thankful. To this day, I'm thankful that I worked for an agency that treated me like a protectee that day.
The guys and the girls all, jumped in, and, everybody worked together. And it was an honor.
It's just a heavy thing to carry, every day. I'm like, I do it and I'm fine, but I just want people to remember those that are no longer with us. Not only in New York, but the Pentagon and Shanksville, everybody who was lost that day. Just please don't ever forget those people.
Value everything you have, because every day is a blessing. And especially now in such a polarized world, really just take stock of what's important. Family, friends, share your emotions, let people know that you care for them, that they're loved. And because at the end, that's what matters.